Heart of Oak, part of the Mauritius campaign. Look at all this nonsense. We're not quite there yet. Today in the campaign is February the 9th. There we go. So this is the coast of Madagascar. And after recording the last video, I got to thinking about this. In the last video, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched episode 19, in episode 20, we're going to talk about the ultimate fate of the Ceylon. Now, as you recall, the Ceylon got stuck. They had a 50-50 shot at being the big dog or the little dog. How do I put this? You know, sometimes you're the shark, sometimes the shark gets you. Right, sometimes you get the shark, and sometimes the shark gets you. They had a 50-50 chance. Didn't work out well for the French. Getting a little tired of saying that in this campaign, but hey, as above, so below. Maybe there's a reason for it. Who can say? The Ceylon was intercepted by the HMS Sirius, and the HMS Sirius came out on top, captured the Ceylon. And we said, oh, well, now the Ceylon has to sail upwind. Au contraire, mon Wargaming frère. In fact, the Ceylon can go out to sea a little bit and then come way down here and then go all the way down to the Horn of Africa and essentially be taken out of the campaign entirely. And there's something to be said for that. Remember that ultimately, when it comes to sea power, the two nations were fairly well matched. It was basically four ships of fourth rate, fourth-rated ships, fourth-raters on each side, with a couple of little, cruisers and not cruisers. What do you call those things in this? Sloops, brigs. Yeah. Well, now the balance is starting to tilt heavily in favor of the British because we have to take the Ceylon off the table. And maybe that's a problem strategically for the British because maybe the Admiralty down there in South Africa says, oh, I think you guys got this. Maybe they do and maybe they don't. Wait, this Orient, I think this was captured by the British, wasn't it? Let's check our notes and I'll show you kind of what those look like. Oh, here's the action late in the day, February 9th, and then actually February 8th, and then actually February 9th. Just after dawn, and that is when the action took place. So today's video, he said, by way of introduction, 3 minutes into the video, is figuring out the ultimate fate of what happens to the other ship that was on station off the coast of Madagascar. That is, of course, the HMS Boetica. Boetica is going to want to sail back into the fray and get back in here and start doing some patrolling. We'll figure out what day she's going to arrive, and we're going to figure out what the Venus and the Orient... No, the Orient is still in possession of the French. What was the ship? Was it the Sophie? Why am I thinking it was the Sophie? Who did the British capture? The Ceylon, the Sirius. This is where you're going to go back to your notes. It was the Creole. Is now on its way. I think she's still on her way back to Rodrigues. Or is the green? I should have wrote this down. Why did I not write down which one the green is? I think that's the Creole patrolling, but I'm not sure. It's the Raisonnable. It's the Raisonnable. That's a reasonable assumption by process of elimination. It's the only one of the ships of the line left on the list here. We're going to rewind the clock here a little bit. The 9th and the 10th, that's when the Sirius and the Boetica decide they are going to start returning. They rendezvous somewhere in here, and now they have to sail. Well, how are we going to get upwind? If you sail downwind anywhere in that direction, you're sailing very slowly. According to the movement rates in Heart of Oak, at 50 kilometers to the day, you're only going to be making 50 kilometers, give or take, upwind, 30 miles as the weather takes us. Now, that could be, you're tacking back and forth a whole lot for that. Or maybe you're just barely making headway this 45 degrees and coming back. We just kind of hand wave all that away and we say, you know what, this is pretty much where they would have rendezvoused. So if we crawl upwind, then that means we're going to be taking So that was, they rendezvous at dawn on the 10th. And then there's the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. So they're going to get back onto our map. And we'll line these up just like they were right here on the 16th. Okay, and they get back to their patrol on the 17th or about, evening on the 17th. Okay, so I thought they were going to be here on the 9th. That's not the case. They're going to be, and maybe we just say, maybe at this point they kind of go, let's just call this the 17th to make the math a little easy. Maybe they go this way. Maybe we just kind of swing that around a little bit. Maybe they met over here. Look, whatever. To keep it simple, that's going to be the 18th. This will be the 19th. Why do I have 3? Oh, right, because that was where they were going to be on the 3rd, 4th. Yeah, that's not the case. So we don't have to worry about the first digit. So this would be the 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. If nothing else happens, the 22nd will see our 2 ships, the Nereid the Boetica and the Sirius, in this general region down here, which ultimately means I don't think we have to think about them very hard anymore. I put the numbers down here just in case, just to make sure that we knew exactly where they were going to be. The other thing is they are not, I guess ultimately what that means is they're not going to play any additional part in the activities where we have to start tracking these day by day. The Marsh is going to be here on the 9th. Ceylon got captured. We can stop thinking about that one. The Caroline is here on the 9th. So if we rewind the clock to the 9th, we know that the other ships that remain on station, the Leopard and the Nereid, are going to be here on the 7th, 8th, 9th, and here on the 10th. We know that. The French do not. So I need to break out the colored pencils. Because the Caroline, remember, and I even wrote this down, is trying to make it to checkpoint. That's what the number 2 is right here. I got to slide this over just a little bit. Let me get this centered. The Caroline has orders to sail for this point. That's the path of travel that she's taking. The French Admiralty said, we want you to hook hard and go off to the northeast. Race as far as you can. Remember, they're trying to get to the latitudes where the prevailing winds are to the west. That ain't here, Chief. Likewise, you see this little number 3? It's been weeks, I know. The Marche and the Revenant are making for number 3. And as you can see, on the 9th, the only 2, remember, all the other action is going on over there, way far away, hundreds of miles, almost 400 miles away. The ships that are on patrol on the 9th are way over here. So that means with our standard speed of 58 millimeters per day, or traveling 5 times 50 is about 300 kilometers a day. Wow, these ships can move pretty quick, can't they? What is that? 300 kilometers? Man, in real units, that's like, I got to multiply that by 0.6, so 180 miles a day. Not bad when you're just closing with the wind. So there's where they're at on the 10th. And then on the 11th, they are going to sail off to the Bay of Bombay. So the Marche and the Revenant are in the Bay of Bombay. Now, there is a chance, of course, that the British ships will get tired of waiting and they'll sail up in that direction. But given the vast tracklessness of the northern Indian Ocean, not going to happen. Our campaign is this little sandbox. Let's find out what happens with the Caroline. So on the 9th, so they left on the 8th, and then here's where they're at. So that was the 8th, 9th. So now let's find out where they're at on the 9th. And I think the Caroline is likely. So here's our direction. And at 5, almost 6, so 14, we got to get down to the 8. So the 9th, so that was the 9th. The 9th is when they set sail. So the 10th is going to put them right here, and it puts the patrol vessels over here. And the 11th puts our patrol vessels right there, and it looks like these ships are going to get away as well. Now, in our example, in the real world, by the way, the ships that were docked in this little port right here, Mahaburg, that's what I've labeled it. It's also known as, I believe, Grand Port, is what the British called it. They there was a huge British raid on this. But the British, in our case, they satisfied themselves with a raid on St. Pierre and capturing a little sloop with very little loss of life. It was a very successful raid. The Admiral was probably way happier because they didn't burn a full warehouse with like 600,000 pounds, British pounds, currency worth of rare silks, which means I can't even say it now. The Admiral, what was his name? I want to say Harley. That's not it. It's the best friend of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Hawsley? Oh, boy. Lucky for me, I'm a family man, and my daughter is an expert on one of the two. Either Diary of a Wimpy Kid or early 19th century British admirals. So Admiral Rowley is probably going to get in a little bit of trouble with the admirals for not launching a similar raid that we saw in the real world. But I think the big fat payday that he's going to get and that they're going to get a share of will go a pretty good ways towards distancing themselves. We're getting pretty close to the end of this campaign. Our 4 ships now are the only ships of any real might in the islands. And the question then becomes, what do we do with the fact that the British now continue to have these 4 vessels, Raisonnable, Leopard, Nereid, Sirius, Boetica? And what do we do? Do we have them come back? Remember that the big final hoopty, when the British said, we're just going to send a whole lot more guys and a whole lot more men, I think we can end the campaign here because in the summer of 1810, that's when the British forces, the commanders-in-chief, remember there's a fella stomping around Europe by the name of Napoleon. You might have heard of him. It was in all the papers. They've decided that it's time to stop trying to win this with half measures. And our successful raid on St. Pierre, we can rationalize or justify that it showed them that this really is the soft underbelly of the French. And the only real question that remains is, will that major offensive show up before the French ships return? And in order to answer that question, I think what we'll do is end the campaign with a big hoopty of our own. Admiral Rowley says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw all of my ships into this area right here, and we are going to intercept anybody that returns. So how do we know who returns? We can do a process just like we did in the first episode of this campaign. Alternatively, we can repeat the process that we used at the start of the campaign. The French return in late 1809. No, that's not it. Where's my rules? Remember late 1809 when the French returned? I do. That was great. From the Bay of Bombay, each HMS vessel gets 1 shot to intercept a random French vessel. I probably could have phrased that a little better. I'm writing like a wargame designer here. I guess this was edited by the same people that edit the books published by Osprey. Ha! 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 Kill me. All right, so here's the deal. The British now have a lot more ships on their roster, okay? In fact, they have this many ships. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ships of the line, plus the Victor and Creole. We're going to leave one of these. See the Raisonnable? These little numbers after the ship's names are how good the captains are. We're going to leave the Raisonnable down here patrolling in, because he's only got a captaincy of 1. That means we have 1, 2, 3, 4... And let's send the Victor as well. We've got 5 chances to intercept French vessels up in the Bay of Bombay. Somewhere up there, around there, on the way back. So what we do is we say, okay, Leopard's going to go first. I'm going to roll a d4 to find out which vessel they catch sight of. Top to bottom. 1, 2, 3. So the Leopard encounters the Caroline. The next step is to have the captains each roll a d6. We'll use black for the British, white for the French. We're going to add the captain's skill. The Caroline, this is going to be +6. This is going to be +4. We do a simple roll-off. We get a 9, and we get a 10. Holy cats. So the French have won, and according to my little rules here, the high score wins. If you double the opponent's score, you can capture his vessel. All right, that's not the case here. So the Leopard caught sight of the Caroline, couldn't close with her, a little too clever. The captain of the Caroline, managed to get away. So now, what about the Nereid? He's got a captain skill of 5. I'm going to roll that on screen so you can see it. It's a 4. Now the Revenant, who has a captain skill of 6. These are the same captains that we had before. I might have increased each of these by 1, given that these captains each had an extra year of training in the hot crucible of Mauritius, but I'm not going to worry about that. So ultimately, the Caroline the Revenant has a +1. And we get a tie. The French vessel wins. It gets away. Now we have the Sirius, who is going to try to capture the Venus. They both have a captain skill of 3, so this is even Stevens. We get a 4 and a 5, and this time the British have the higher ship. So, no, that's not enough. The British have to double in order to capture the vessel. So the last of the big ships that might have some fun is going to intercept the Caroline. This is the Boetica now, has intercepted the Caroline. The Caroline has a captain skill of 6, so +6 to the white die, +3 to the other, and we have no doublings. So a whole lot of people sailing at each other, chasing each other down, but the British are not able to grab any of those 4 vessels. Now the French ships have an opportunity to capture British shipping vessels. We take their captain skill, we roll a d6, and if we're greater than or equal to 7, we capture. So the Venus is looking for a 4. The Venus is going to capture a vessel. So let me just make a little note here that we have 1 capture. So she's going to come back with a prize in tow. Now the Marche needs to get a 5 and comes back nothing. But the Caroline, any score will be a capture. If she rolls a 6, she can try again. And with a 5, she does not, so she captures. And the Revenant, again, if I can roll a 6, the Revenant may, if I can roll a 6 on camera, there we go. With a 1, she's badly damaged in a storm. She becomes a hooker. Now, the Revenant is a fairly small ship, but she is damaged by the weather. Oh, poor luck. We have 2 captured British Indiamen, and the Revenant is going to be limping back home. After all the French vessels are done, we sail back. 1 random British ship can make 1 last intercept check against a random French vessel. We have 5 British ships, top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know how it works. So the Leopard has 1 last chance to intercept the number 3, the Caroline. So the Leopard is a 4, the Caroline is a 6. Captaincy plus 1d6. The Caroline scores a 7. The Leopard, or what did I say? It was the it was the Leopard scores. So that's a 7 versus a 7. So it's a tie vessel. If the British captaincy plus the French captaincy damage the French escort. If you beat the French plus a d6, then you rescue it, but it's a tie. Okay. In other words, all they're able to do is damage that ship damaged. So the East Indiaman has lost a sail, and it's going to be sailing even slower than usual. Now, why are we going through all of this at this point? There's one last thing. British ships that are taking prize or damaged, they remain on station. The others are returned to Mauritius. All right. So now we have to find out when these ships return. September, October, November. I checked my notes. Historically, the big balloon, the British show up in November of 1810. So any ship that arrives in November or December will be out of the mix. They didn't make it back in time. If it's a French vessel, they're going to sail in, and whoopsie, it turns out that what they thought was a safe harbor is not safe, and maybe they're tricked. Maybe the British see them off on the horizon. They fly the white flag to lure them into port, and then, they get captured. That's after the campaign is over. For right now, we have to roll a d6 for each vessel to find out when it returns. By the way, if you are, this is when you return, we add 1 to the die roll if you are a damaged ship. In other words, the Venus and its captured vessel will arrive, and I just roll a straight 6 in October. So I'm going to write October here. So Venus will beat the big, and here's, let me just back up a step. What's going on here is Admiral Hawley wants to grab as many prizes as possible before the invasion kicks off. That's how he makes his bones. So he still has October to try to intercept the Venus. The Marche returns back empty-handed. I rolled a 3. He is also going to return in October, or perhaps I should say she. Now, the Caroline is a little bit different. Because the vessel she is escorting was damaged by the British trying to rescue her, maybe there was a big battle. I don't know. Camera wasn't looking that way. It happened off screen. But the point is, we're going to add 1 to this die roll, which means with a result of a 2, we still get a 3. Oh, basically adding a 1 means on a result of a 3 or better, this ship would arrive too late. But it turns out they're getting there in October. Now, the Revenant, same thing. We're going to add 1 to the die roll. We're going to roll it on camera so you can see. And again, everybody comes back in October. Well, I guess we have ourselves a little convoy, don't we? That's pretty exciting. Let's find out when the British ships return. The same process applies. I will roll a d6 for each British ship. None of them were damaged, right? They spend most of their time running away. So I have to roll. Remember, the Raisonable is on station. So we'll write that down. On station. The Leopard and the Nereid, we'll do the black die is the Leopard, the white die is the Nereid, are both going to show up. Here's all those 6s in December, damaged, and what can you do? The Sirius and the Boetica are going to both arrive in October. And so we have 3 vessels that could intercept this little flotilla. And then we have the Victor and the Creole, who are also going to return. Now, I didn't give them an opportunity to intercept these vessels. They're very small. These are kind of sloops. And the Victor will be showing up in October. And then the Creole will arrive in December. I guess she was repaired in time to race on up. And remember that she is the ship that was rescued by the cutting out mission. So what we have here is a little convoy returning in December, a little late through the storms. We've got the Venus, Marsh, Caroline, and Revenant. And I'm going to do things a little different this time. I have a couple more of these maps. And to make this more interesting than just a potential 1v1, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to set the wind direction at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's the direction the wind is blowing here in October. And maybe I should write that down. October, the wind is going to be coming slightly out of the north. Let's just call that, you know what I'm thinking now, what I should have said? We're going to call that the east by northeast. That's the wind. Blow, Mr. Cloudman, blow. Then, and I should write this down, October 1810. Then we have to figure out when the French vessel comes on the map. Well, before we do that, let's find out where the French vessels come on. 1 through 6. They're going to come on at point number 2, and they are headed for Grand Port. This is the big capital, okay? When are they coming on? Well, first of all, before we get to that, let's roll to find out which number the British come in on. Also a 2. I'm going to re-roll that. There's 2 ways to do this. One is that the British are in hot pursuit. And, that's a good way to do it. Let's say the British are in hot pursuit. That's going to make for a really boring tabletop scenario, though, right? Because as we've seen, it's days and days and days and days and days. Maybe we have a fight over here in St. Brandon, and maybe the British are a little bit cagier, and the French are going to try to dogleg around St. Brandon, and we wind up with a battle over here. Remember, this is just a couple of spits of land, a couple of very shallow shoals. Okay, British and French both coming on. What day do the French arrive? I'm going to roll a D. Let's roll a D20. to find out I want to make it as likely as possible. What day in October do they arrive? I'm going to roll these 2 dice. And I get a 5 and a 2. So the British will arrive on the 2nd and the French on the 5th. But wait, so how are the British in hot pursuit if they're 3 days behind? I think the British are going to line up right here. I guess that's probably the way to do it. Remember, they can see a grand total of 1 centimeter in every direction. And how many British vessels did we say were going to be in the mix here? Just 3 of them, plus the Raisonnable. Maybe they catch them. They've got a few days in hand. So maybe we've got a line that looks like this. And that's how far these ships can see. And if we line them up, we'll put the Raisonnable here. And I'm going to put little tick marks every 11 millimeters. 22, 33, 44. And so there's the Raisonnable. We've got the Sirius. This will all make sense shortly. We've got who else is coming to the party? The Boetica. And, oh, you know what? Let's put the Creole down here. I'm going to switch this up a little bit. I'm going to put the Creole and is that it? 4. Oh, we only have 4 vessels. All right, so I guess we'll make this the Raisonnable. And the British, for whatever reason, return to the islands a little bit quicker. And that's what their patrol looks like. So now what I can do is say, well, which approach are the French going to take? It's just kind of a little mini game, right? Just kind of a little, what are the odds? And if we roll they've got the wind kind of at this quarter. So we could probably just say, all right, if we line them up, I'm going to use the King's Good English here. And I'm going to cover up where the British are, right? So I kind of know they're in there somewhere. And I'm going to go every half inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I guess that's 2.5. 7, 8. Yeah, okay, I'm going to go 8. We're going to swing wide. So 1, 2, 3. This is where the French come on. This is their basically target, right? So they're going to appear right here at the tip of this arrow. Right there is where they appear, okay? And they're going to make a beeline for one of these numbers 1 through 8. I think you see where I'm going with this. So a 7 means they're going to sail like this. And fortunately for the French, they're still sailing essentially downwind. So by hitting the 7, they're going to miss that picket line altogether. They're sailing as a hooker. Now, I got to look that up. And I hear you guys giggling. Oh, you could call that vessel a hooker. Yeah, I do. That's just what it's called when she's not doing so great. And the campaign rules in this book, we haven't done a whole lot with the captain levels. I just prefer to leave that as abstract. I'm the captain always. These average, here we go, sailing downwind, normally you'd be going 58. It's only going to be 43 because, well, actually, if it's a convoy, it's only going to be 17. So that means they appear on the 5th, and at 17, that's 6, 7, 8. So that's on the 8th of October. 8, 7, 6, and then we go 17, 34, so that's 9, 10, and then it's going to be on the 11th. Yeah, they're really taking their sweet time here, aren't they? And then they say, once they get to the right parallel, to follow the shortest distance, basically right here on the 12th, is where they turn. And just in another, well, let's see here. We'll flip that over so we can get it as precise as possible. We're going to go 17, 34, and then there you go. On the 13th, 14th, early on the 15th, our whole fleet is going to arrive back in Maharbourg. And they will be on station when the British come with everything they got. And I believe they took La Réunion first, which is going to be very similar to our game. They'll take this island, and they had a fleet of like 70 ships. So the campaign is going to end with a whimper, not a bang. Don't blame me. Blame these pesky little fellas right here. I had a whole lot of checkpoints, a whole lot of areas where we might have had that big frigate on frigate, 4-on-4 action, and the dice just didn't cooperate. But you know what? I think 20 episodes, about, what was it, like 15 hours of enjoyment out of just a couple of little books worth of rules. I think that this kind of map-based campaign is more and more people these days. I'm seeing them talk about campaigns on paper, generating tabletop battles. And it occurred to me the other day. Somebody pointed out that Warhammer 40K is kind of like professional wrestling, because you have a whole bunch of like super manly factions that just look for excuses to beat the snot out of each other. They're all larger than life. They're all really colorful. They all have big personalities. And naval wargaming is very similar. I had 4 ships on this roster, 4 ships on this roster, and I'm just looking for excuses for them to beat the heck out of each other. So I don't know where I'm going with that. It struck me as interesting. I'll bet you could write a whole master's thesis on how naval wargaming and ships of the line was the professional wrestling of the mid 1800s, if you will. I don't know. Either way, this was a lot of fun. Thank you, as always, for coming along for the ride. And I have no idea what our next campaign is. Maybe we'll turn our attention back to the Wolflands now that we've got Hell March under our belt and we know how to do smaller, quicker battles. I think we're set up for that. But I also need to get back to that sci-fi game that we looked at just a little bit, that modern-day skirmish game. I want to try a campaign of that. We haven't seen old Cobalt. You're not here for me to make empty promises. You're here for this action. I'm glad you're here. I'll see you next time. Until then, I'm praying for you.